Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. Hope you're doing well. And it is time for a review of the commercial debut album from Injury Reserve, Injury Reserve. Injury Reserve. Hip-hop trio, native to Arizona. It's been a little while now since Richie and Groggs and producer Parker Corey began making buzz with their debut mixtape in 2015, Live at the Dentist Office, and at the time when this thing dropped, I was blown away by their cutting-edge take on jazz rap, as well as their knack for creating both total bangers and introspective sad boy anthems such as Kill the Vibe. The production was consistently visceral and creative and bubbly. The bars throughout each track were sometimes witty, sometimes conscious, sometimes ridiculous, sometimes aggressive. If there's one thing to know about Injury Reserve, it's that they do not want to be pigeonholed into one thing, which is something they've successfully avoided with each new project. And this has most likely been for the better, even if it's kind of led to the industry not knowing entirely what to make of them. One thing's for sure though, for Injury Reserve, it's about the music, and it's just about the music, which showed in their 2016 mixtape Floss, a project that showed some of the trio's best tracks yet. Oh Shit, All This Money, songs that to this day I am shocked that they sit under 1 million views on YouTube. And the deep cuts on this thing were even more insane, like the trippy industrial banger Eeny Meeny Miny Mo, or the jittery and head-crushing What's Goody with an amazing feature from Cakes the Killa. And the trio's bangers kept coming on their next EP, Drive It Like It's Stolen, with See You Sweat, as well as Boom Boom Boom. But still, even at this point, very little in the way of viral acknowledgement of the trio's efforts. Thankfully, nods from the likes of Amine, as well as this new deal from Loma VISTA Records, has brought the trio some of the long overdue recognition they deserve. And with that, they essentially started dropping a new crop of singles in promotion of this new project. Tracks that were some of the group's most futuristic and conceptual songs to date. We have Jawbreaker featuring Rico Nasty and Proteins, a cut all about fashion and overspending on it in the social media age. The song isn't necessarily anti-capitalist or anti-looking good or anything like that. It's really a song that urges listeners as they express themselves through clothes to forge their own path with that and not mindlessly buy into whatever the most expensive hypebeast trends are just for the sake of fitting in. The Proteins hook on this track is absolutely unique for a hip-hop song, and the Rico Nasty verse fits really nicely into the concept of the track. Meanwhile, Parker's instrumental on this track is great. It sounds like an international, showy, abstract piece of music soundtracking a fashion show. Then there's Jailbreak the Tesla, which is pretty much about hacking into a Tesla car. Parker on this instrumental develops this perfectly glitchy, noisy, post-industrial, deconstructed club beat. Makes me feel like I'm being downloaded into the goddamn mainframe. Richie's first verse on the song sets the tone of the track really well, builds the concept up in a witty and entertaining way. Meanwhile, the Amine feature on the back end is absolutely hilarious. These references to Elon taking shrooms and Grimes' voice being the GPS, referring to himself as a black James Bond and saying, your engine go vroom, my engine go silence. Aesthetically, the song resembles more like a Sophie track or a PC Music single, not your average hip-hop song, which I think just goes to show how unique Injury Reserve are. KORUNA and Lime wasn't a bad taster for the album either. It's got an instrumental that sounds like an Odd Future throwback, but there's way better lyricism and lyrical chemistry between Richie and Groggs. Based off the singles alone, I was anticipating this was going to be Injury Reserve's most defining musical moment, their most groundbreaking record yet. But the deep cuts on here tell a slightly different story. For one, this is the shortest full-length project the trio has put out so far at 38 minutes, a chunk of which is padded out with these interlude cuts that don't really add that much to the flow. Whether you're talking about the QWERTY interlude or the song Hello, which is a decent idea that I wish was fleshed out into a longer track where the message of this very short cut could be brought home a little bit better. Then there's the 2-minute rap song tutorial, which introduces listeners to this monotone, dystopian female robot voice introducing separately different parts of a hip-hop song, the drums, the melody, the hook, etc. It's a cute listen once through, but once you know the humor and the progression of the track, it's painfully tedious, and there's really no reason to hear it ever again. Even if the example song shown in the interlude kinda sounds fire. In fact, I would have rather just had this song. There are maybe a few other tracks here as well that I found a little confusing, like the song Get the Fuck Up. I love how this track busts in with another noisy industrial beat. The trio invites Cakes the Killa on once again to deliver a completely fire verse, one that sets the bar for every other feature on the album. The first leg of the track is incredible. It's amazing, but the transition it makes after a minute 30 is a head scratcher. It totally deflates all the momentum the song had going so far. Sputtering beat, weepy strings, kind of antisocial verses from Richie and Groggs. It just seems like the weirdest place to put this. The segue wasn't all that great either. On top of that, the track ends off on a totally sour note with these repeated samples of JPEG Mafia just saying, "Get the fuck up!" pitched at different levels. Sometimes it's low, sometimes it's chipmunk, but every time it's annoying. And not to say that's on JPEG Mafia and that I'm unhappy with his appearance here. I just wish his feature and his vocals were utilized a bit more creatively. An even harder pill to swallow, in my view, in the track list here is the song Best Spot in the House, which is a really odd exorcism of emotions, especially for Richie, as he's rapping about being looked up to by his audience and then not feeling like he's living up to the idolization, which I think is a pretty normal reaction for most musicians that find themselves with a fan base. However, instead of agonizing over his shortcomings or analyzing this phenomenon on a macro level, the track comes off more like a lecture to the fan for, I don't know, selling themselves short or being dumb for idolizing him or them in the first place, which is a really odd tone to take, especially since even the most hardcore fans understand that nobody's perfect, even their favorite artists, but everyone needs inspiration and everyone needs something to aspire to. And this phenomenon Richie is rapping about is more about what the artist does and who they are as an artist versus who they actually are as a person. But this realization seems to elude the song's concept, though. Plus, some of the auto-tune vocal breaks on this track just seem really sloppy and tacked on, just tossing something in there because there has to be some sort of refrain, some sort of hook. New Hawaii is another moment on the album that comes in with great intentions, but leaves me feeling underwhelmed. Even if the back end of the track features Richie delivering one of the most beautiful and romantic rap verses of this decade. He describes these kids he plans to have with his significant other as if they're pieces of art. It's kind of beautiful. But everything that brought us up to this point is a total and complete snooze fest. And not that the guest singers throughout the track, especially Dram, are all that bad. They're not. But the beat on this thing is so skeletal and so bare and so scant, it barely supports the song. It's just like background noise. There are some other tracks on here that I liked, though. There's the Cut Wax On featuring Freddie Gibbs, not one of the trio's best dark and nocturnal tracks, but certainly a good one. The heavy drums, the massive bass, the dreary distant tones, and the instrumental are all really nice. Grog's verse on the track reflects on the difference between being industry successful and personally successful, socially rich and financially poor. Meanwhile, the Freddie Gibbs appearance on the track is pretty good. He brings an incredible sync up with the flow of the hook and Grog's verse, and given his previous material on Shadow of a Doubt, the very dark hip-hop songs all over that record, he is a perfect fit for this song. The song Gravy and Biscuits isn't bad. It's one of the shorter and less developed cuts on here, but it's got a fun attitude, some very clever wordplay from Groggs and Richie, and an instrumental that sounds like something Eminem would have rapped on back in the day with like these playful groovy beats and funny Latin jazz piano samples. The song What a Year It's Been is a noisy and intense retrospective on everything that's brought the group in the short term up to this point where they're on Loma Vista. They've got quite a bit of recognition, more than they've had in the past, and they are coming out with their new Injury Reserve album. It is the best track here when it comes to exploring the change and stress and depression that has come along with all of these shifts in the group's career. The opening verse from Groggs on this cut is soul-crushing, with him talking about being depressed and being in a funk and ghosting his loved ones and so on and so forth. The explosion of drums and psychedelic auto-tune in the second leg of the track is incredible. It's got a huge, like, Kanye and Travis Scott vibe to it. And then there's the heartwarming and triumphant closer, Three-Man Weave, which sees the group off on a positive note, much like the song Look Mama, I Did It, but without as many tears being shed. A few vocal jabs from Fonte of Little Brother fame, which is a sort of funny inclusion on the album given the line from S on Your Chest where Richie says Big Pooh is kind of lame. But as far as Richie and Grog's verses go, I love how they play into all these themes of sports and basketball and how these things used to matter to them when they were younger, and now they've kind of moved on to music and other aspirations. I love that when Richie said he was younger and playing, that by hip-hop standards he was Russ decent, as good as Russ, the rapper. Russell. Overall, it's a decent album, not as consistent as Dentist Office or Floss, in my opinion, sadly. Not as full of as many futuristic and hard-hitting cuts as I thought it might be due to some of the singles. But still, what Injury Reserve has accomplished on Injury Reserve is a cut above most of what you're going to find out there in the current rap field today. I'm feeling a light to decent 7 on this thing. Transition. Have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best. You're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Injury Reserve, forever.